Hi, I'm Danielle Williams, AK. I'm a designer, stylist, consultant, and advocate for size inclusivity and diversity within the fashion industry. Welcome to the Xtnded Convos podcast. This podcast is a space to host conversations with industry insiders to learn about their journey through the industry. From designers to content creators, creative directors to community builders, we will get the inside scoop on the people taking the plus and inclusive size space to the next level. Follow us on Instagram at Xtnded.co and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest episodes. This is the Xtnded Convos podcast presented by Xtend Consulting Co. So I'm excited to introduce my guest for today's episode of the Xtnded Convos podcast, Gia Sinatra. Gia is a plus-size model and founder of Gia IRL, a clothing brand for women who want to feel beautiful, sexy, and fashionable at any size. Since its launched about a year ago, Gia IRL has already gained notoriety and has been featured in many publications, including Forbes, Who What Wear, Cosmo, Teen Vogue, and more. She's a boss babe with a clear vision for her brand and a unique perspective of the plus size fashion industry. And I can't wait for you all to hear more about her and her story today. So with that, I am going to welcome Gia.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Of course. I always like to start these podcasts off with kind of how we met. This podcast is really focused on the people I've met through my journey in the industry and really helping. I want to hear more voices about the people who are like in the trenches doing the work. And so you are one of those people that I've met during my journey. So I'm going to share a little bit about how we met. Feel free to chime in with anything that you remember from your perspective. But I was the design director over at 11 Honore, and you were working as our fit model.
Mm-hmm.
And we started fitting at the top of 2020, and then COVID hit, like boom,
Yes.
bang. And what was so interesting about that time is it really forced us to be very inventive in how we decided to execute fittings. And we were all just like, all right, like, how are we going to make this happen? So whether we were fitting in factories or inside houses, outside houses, virtually, we kind of did what needed to be done to make it happen. And I feel like inevitably because of that time, which was like so crazy, we all just got really close because we didn't have a ton of people we were seeing, but
Yeah.
we saw a small group of people consistently. And during that time, we learned a lot about each other, talked about family and things we were working on. And so that's kind of how we connected.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I forget that it was during that time, but yeah, I think that we did get closer, and at one point in time you guys were some of the only people I was seeing.
Yeah.
Aside from, our partners. So yeah, it was an interesting time, but it was fun.
Yeah. I think we all learned a lot during that process. And yeah, it was a fun time. And so I kind of want to start at your beginning and really kind of can you tell us what your introduction into the fashion industry was?
So my introduction was I wanted to become a plus size model. And at that time I really don't even know exactly why. Like I just, I was plus size. I was starting to see these plus size models popping up, and I was like, "Oh, this looks fun. This looks like something that I could do." And it's funny because that's really what led me to where I am now of getting into that industry. And so when I signed with my agency, my agent said, "I think you'd be really great for fit modeling."
Mm.
And actually, years before, I had been approached for fit modeling at the gym.
Mm.
And I was a smaller size, but I always had like the proportions, no matter kind of what my size
Right.
was for fit modeling. And so I kind of dabbled years prior, but I didn't get any clients from that. So then come back to when I started plus size modeling and she mentioned fit modeling. I started doing some of that, and I did really like seeing the behind the scenes
Mm-hmm.
of what was happening with the pieces. And so I was mainly modeling and then doing a little fit modeling. And then at one point, 11 Honore was the only client I would still fit for, because I didn't love fit modeling.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of work, and you're like
Yeah.
standing. It kind of gets hard on your body if you're staying for hours and
Can only
hours.
imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. So at one point you guys were the only client I kept. And because I enjoyed working with you guys. And so I think, so seeing that and seeing behind the scenes, I started kind of understanding what went into things
Right.
behind the scenes. And um and then it just, I being plus size my whole life and constantly struggling to find pieces that I wanted. And I was shopping for, it was a vacation, and it was, spring was coming up,
Mm-hmm.
summer was coming up, and I was looking on all these websites and I couldn't find anything that I wanted in my size. And like, I was getting to a point where I was really not wanting to do fast fashion anymore and wanting
Yeah.
to shop nicer quality pieces. And I was like,
Invest, kind of.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I had specific things that I was seeing on these websites that were made for smaller girls that I
Mm-hmm.
wanted. And I was just struggling of like, I want this on my size. I want that. And um I had made a post on my Instagram saying, "Oh, I wish I could find this in my size." And one of my friends was like, "You should start your own clothing line."
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "Huh, maybe." And then I thought like, "Okay, how could I make this work?"
Right.
And so yeah, and I reached out to some friends, and that kind of led into
Your
starting the
IRL.
IRL.
Awesome. So I want to talk briefly because you mentioned that you've been plus size your whole life. I am
Mhm.
the same. I'm like, I don't remember not being plus size.
Yeah.
So what has kind of been your personal experience in navigating the shopping landscape from younger to even now, and kind of how has that changed or shifted?
So when I was younger, I wasn't embracing it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to be plus size.
Right.
I was always different. I was always the bigger girl. So I wanted to wear what my friends were wearing. So I always struggled. And then it was also embarrassing when you're younger and you're like, I
Mm-hmm.
remember like going to Old Navy and like hiding the size that I was wearing. It's
Yeah.
funny because now I'm like, okay, I'm a size 18,
Right.
whatever, 16. Like I'm so like vocal about it.
Right.
But I remember being so ashamed at that point.
Yeah.
And just basically, I mean, Old Navy was like one of my go-tos because
Yeah.
they always had those sizes in stores. And I wanted to fit in with everybody else when I was younger. And I think really not until I started kind of getting into the plus size modeling world and seeing more plus size models in the media did I start kind of embracing that more. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I liked my curves, but I wasn't like fully embracing it. Like I was
Yeah.
getting to a point where I was like, okay, like I'm curvy. It's my body. I was like accepting it. And then I started just getting to a point where I was seeing all these beautiful women with curves and were plus size. And then I feel like I started to embrace it more. And then just finding like the stores that I could shop at
Yeah.
online. Um, I still just think there's just things missing,
Yeah.
it's like for plus size, you only have a couple options.
Right.
When you're like straight size, you have thousands of options.
Yeah, I was talking to a college class, and they were asking like what's the one thing that we should know, because they're kind of focusing on plus size and size inclusivity, and I'm like,
Mhm.
we aren't like, plus size is not an aesthetic, right? Like
Yeah.
a plus size woman can be more preppy, can be more goth, can be more boho. Like
Mhm.
they're in the same way that a straight size woman has all of these different options of brands and choices, a plus size woman should have the same. And so thinking that we're in this box and that we only want the same thing from every brand is a really antiquated way of thinking, and I
Yeah.
love how even with your brand, it's like you're touching a different customer, a different
Mhm.
aesthetic, a different market, and I think, more brands need to keep that in mind as they're building or expanding their size ranges.
Mhm. Definitely. Yeah, I think a problem where brands go wrong is they think that plus size women want something different,
Mhm,
and
right,
they make a different collection for plus size,
right.
when I think really we just want the same things as everyone
Right.
else,
Or
just like
that's like they'll take the straight size version and make it so weird and covered and change it so drastically that it's like not the same thing.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Right.
Um, so then you kind of spoke to it a little bit the moment where you were like, okay, I'm gonna start my clothing line. What was the thing that at what point were you like, okay, I'm really actually going to do this? Like I'm gonna invest my time, my money to like make this happen.
Yeah. Um, I'm the kind of person that when I get an idea in my head, I I just go with it and I have to
Mhm.
see it through. And
Good.
it with this, everything was falling into place. Like we needed, like every person that we needed was falling into place, and it just everything was working out so perfectly that it just
Mhm.
really felt meant to be.
Mhm.
And my friend is a designer who helped me design everything. And I've known her for like 16 years. And
Awesome.
I think once I also saw those sketches, and then you're just like, okay, we have to have this. Like, this is such a missing mark. Like,
Right.
we're missing these types of pieces in the market. So, yeah, I had to see it through, and I really believed in it once I like came up with the whole plan. I just believed in it so much, and then everything was falling into place, and I'm like, "Okay, I have to see it through." And then at that point, it was spring 2021,
Mhm.
and I knew that if I wanted a spring collection for the following year, we had to move fast.
Right.
So we basically did everything in a year. It
Wow.
was like
Like
full
hit the
speed.
ground running.
It was full speed. We were working nights, we were working overtime. Everybody on my team had other jobs.
Mhm.
They were just helping me on the side. And yeah, we would have night fittings and weekends, and it was just like nonstop.
Yeah.
Um, hit the ground running, and we managed, and we also did production overseas.
Okay.
And so we also had to work with Chinese New Year,
Yeah.
as you know.
Yes.
Um, so we worked all through the holidays, like
Mhm.
me and my production manager. I mean, even like Christmas, like
Yeah.
she had to ask me certain things. Like it was like pretty much not a day went by because they're working through the
Right.
holidays over
Right.
there. So in order to make all those deadlines and get
Right.
everything on the boat to get here, we had to just work overtime. And yeah, we made it. Originally it was January was the goal, but like we knew that that was a little early, but we were, just
Right.
knowing that it'd probably get pushed back. And then we ended up everything ended up arriving in March, um, just in time for a spring launch.
Awesome. You made it
Yeah.
happen. Pulled it over the finish line.
Somehow. Oh my gosh.
When you started that, what was like the first thing you tackled? If you remember, was it like designs or logo or research or trend? Like what was kind of the first thing you did?
So I would say design.
Okay.
I think that was our first step. I met with my designer. I told her the ideas that I had. She had some ideas. We collaborated on that. We kind of, yeah, we just collaborated on ideas. There's even like, I remember one time an idea came to me in the car driving, and I'm like sending her a voice note, like it was actually the Maya Mini. And I was like, I have this idea of like something that's tied and this, and like I found something similar-ish that I was like a tie like this, but then wrap, like I don't know, I thought of this in my head, and then she executed it. And So yeah, so I would say the sketching was like the very first part.
Yeah.
I don't even remember if we had a brand name at that point.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so the brand name was like something that came, I was thinking about it, and but I hadn't decided. I think we had already had the sketches and then
Hmm.
came up with the brand name, because I kept saying things. I'd be driving in the car and I'd be like thinking of things and thinking of words and looking it up. And one day we had a meeting and I think I said GIRL or she said GIRL, and we were like, "Oh, it's cute, but it's not it."
Okay.
And then we like and then we kept coming up with names and names, and then eventually we said it again in another
Uh-huh.
meeting, and, like, she's like, "Is that the name?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"It's kinda cute," but, like, I didn't know if it was, like, too catchy or, like,
Uh-huh.
um, trendy, like, with the IRL,
Right.
and then it was the only thing that we
It's stuck.
loved, and yeah,
Yeah.
we it stuck, and we kept coming back to it, and I'm like, "Okay, I think that's
Now,
it."
I'm glad you told that story because I was wondering how you came on that name, and I actually love it. I think it's clearly you, right? It's like
Mhm,
it's all
mhm,
about kind of you, what you're wanting, what you've been wanting to see, but
mhm.
in a space and form where we can be a part of it too. So I love the name.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted you to hear it and, like, kind of get an understanding for what it is.
Yeah, perfect. So can you tell us a little bit more about your design and kind of fit process? Like how do you from kind of start to end, how do you kind of create your designs and your collections?
So, each one has kind of been different. So the first collection, we basically my designer told me, like, watch old movies. She gave me all this research to do, like, try to find inspiration not from other clothing lines. And so I was really inspired by Italy, and so you'll see there's like a lot of the linen dresses feel very like European,
Yeah,
Italian. I knew I wanted linen. I was really struggling to find a linen dress that I loved, and that was something that I kept seeing, and I'm like, oh, these all these sites have these cute linen dresses.
mhm,
And, so yeah, so we kind of did a mix of, like, inspiration of finding little things that we liked that we could incorporate, and then, yeah, she was telling me, like, "Oh, watch old movies," and then, as far as, like, getting colors, we would look on the runways and see what was upcoming, and, go to Vogue and see, on the runways there what we were seeing color-wise.
right, right.
She's really good at that, because otherwise, I don't know if I would have known where to start, 'cause
Yeah,
because you're a designer, you have a design background, every dress looks different. Every color is meant for different dresses and
right,
lengths and
right.
styles, and so my designers, she's really good with that and giving me ideas on color, and sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, what do you think about this?" And you know, so it's we definitely collaborate on that
Mhm.
side of things. And then sometimes I would get a piece and then I would not like it in that color. And I'm like, okay, I don't really like. At first, we had the Miami in yellow, and it was just a little too yellow for me. Although I
Yeah,
know some people like it, I don't know. I didn't love it.
right,
And so then it was like back to the drawing board. So sometimes you do have to see it in the color.
right.
And
I
when we
agree.
first, yeah, so when we first sampled, we did all of our samples in LA.
Uh-huh.
And, so we went through the first fitting process in LA. I think it was the first sample, maybe a second, I can't remember, but definitely the first samples in LA. So we had just, got everything in the same color.
Okay.
So then we couldn't really tell at that point, and then we sent it over to China and then had everything come in the color that we wanted it in. And so then that fitting, we got to see it in each color and then make changes.
Which completely, to your point, changes the whole vibe of something. Something in black is different than something in yellow.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly. It changes so much. And then it's funny because now sometimes I go back and I like we did this Ali maxi dress in pink at first, and I wasn't really loving the pink. I also was like over analyzing everything and wanted it to be perfect.
Right.
And then I looked back and now I love the pink and I wear it all the time. And I'm like, should we have done it in pink?
Right. And I think also because when you started, and I actually love the way you started by not like designing 50 pieces and like going super crazy. You kind of each one of those dresses, because it is kind of maybe 1 to 3 colorways of something, you do want to be very intentional about how you're applying color into those silhouettes.
Exactly.
What was your approach in deciding how many pieces you wanted to kind of start with or launch with?
So she went ahead and designed 3 different fabric groups collections and presented it to me, and then we went through, and a few things we like, okay, we're going to actually take the sleeves from this piece and put it on here, and from there we chose what pieces we'd actually sample.
Okay.
So she designed more than we would need,
Right.
and then we decided, then from there we sampled everything, and then we pretty much ended up producing all of those samples. It just, we
Okay.
decided like what was going to be drop one,
Right.
and then what was going to come later on.
Okay. You are with the history of being a model, a fit model, as a plus size woman, how I'm sure that has impacted how you kind of go into your fittings or your design meetings. Can you speak to how that experience has translated as you built your own brand?
Yeah, so I think that having that fit model background helped me a lot because now I'm the fit model for my brand.
Okay.
Um, and it's the same but a little bit different now that it's my brand. I still fit the same way. I think I always kind of gave like little like, oh, I would love this as a plus size woman in a fitting. But when it's not your brand, you don't give design call outs. Um, you can make little comments, but you can't really say like, oh, I would change this.
Right. You're focused more on the fit of the actual garment and making that work versus the design. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's nice because my designer had never made things specifically for plus size women
Oh,
before.
okay.
And I've seen even the way that she's evolved. Now she'll say, oh, I think like your girl really likes this, or we should add this. And she really is thinking about the plus size body now, which is
Yeah.
nice to see. Like we just had a fit meeting and she made certain comments, like now she's seeing it on all these different women.
You're
And
right.
so she's seeing it that way. So yeah, so then we get the sample and then I get to fit it on my body and see how it's wearing. And then I like to wear each piece, which is something different than when you're just a fit model. And so then
Right.
I wear it and really see, okay, I don't like the way this is pulling,
Mm-hmm.
or so now I've really tried to give each piece a wear test as
Yeah.
well to feel it, and to feel how it feels on my body when I'm wearing it out. Because sometimes you just, once you're wearing it, you actually feel like, oh,
Right.
actually, like this is a little tight on this
Right.
arm now that I'm in it all day or I'm in it for a couple
Or the
hours.
fabric kind of behaves a little differently over time. It might stretch out or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
One other question I thought of, because what I love a lot about Gia IRL also is kind of the presence that you've had from a social media digital standpoint. How did you, or kind of what has been your approach to social media and kind of the digital media space?
So I have a social media background as being like a content creator and
Right.
influencer myself. Um, I love like the social media side of things and PR,
Mhm.
and coming up with ideas. So I love just the community. Like I've
Mhm.
built a community on there where I talk with everyone and ask questions all the time,
Right.
and people will message me. So I don't know. I just kind of, yeah, it's just, I don't know if I necessarily had like a plan of like
Yeah.
how I was going to execute the social media side, but I kind of just did what I thought.
What felt
And
good. Yeah.
yeah, and kind of like authentic. Like, I mean, I get on, like, it's me mainly on there. At times I
Hmm.
had someone helping me, but I think a lot of people don't realize it's me most of the time on there and like messaging and stuff. But I'm like, hey, and they'll message me and I'm like, oh, and sometimes I'll tell them it's me and sometimes I won't, but
Uh-huh.
I'll get on and like answer fit questions, or if they have a
Yeah.
problem with an order, whatever it is, like I'm on there active with everybody all the time, trying to
Yeah, you are.
talk with them.
I love how you'll say, "Hey, what color," like you'll show a
Mhm.
color card and say like, "What colors are you liking?" or like, "What should we see this dress in?" And I think that ability to build community in that way is
Mhm.
super important, because I think, as we know, this customer is very vocal in terms
Mhm.
of, like, we're not afraid to say, "Hey, we like this, we don't like this, we
Mhm.
love something in this. I was looking for a dress in this color." And so being able, I think I find social media to be it's like an instant think group. Like, you don't have to gather all these people around. It's like you can get
Mhm.
feedback right then and there.
Yeah, I actually had a customer message me, and she said, "I just want to let you know that the Gabrielle Maxi is a little short and
Hmm.
I'm tall." And she goes, "I hope this isn't offensive, but I just want to let you know." And so she didn't know that we were in the middle of the fit process and about to go, like, she didn't know the stage we were at in production with the
Hmm.
new Gabrielle Maxi.
Okay.
And I was like, "Okay, thanks. I so appreciate it." She sent me a picture. She was like, "I'm 5'10" and this is
Hmm.
where it's hitting me. And I was like, "Okay, that's our best seller." And I think the dress is so good
Hmm.
that people didn't really notice that it was like slightly between a midi and a maxi. And I think that
Uh-huh.
was just like something somewhere it just got missed.
Yeah.
And so I went and I looked back at like everybody in the dress that was like tagging us,
Yeah.
everybody. I put it on and I'm like, it is a little short. And I
Uh-huh.
never noticed because I just love the dress so much. And I don't
Right.
know how nobody called it out. And we changed it and we added length. And now it's like the perfect
Perfect.
maxi
Right.
length.
Yeah.
But I was like, I love that she felt comfortable enough to
Right.
message me, and it actually called something out that we didn't see.
Right.
And then as far as colors, sometimes we'll be deciding between 2 colors, and my designer's like, "Go ask them on Instagram." Like,
Yep.
so then we take the poll and we're like, "Okay." Like we Sophia and fuchsia, that's how we decided fuchsia.
Hmm.
The new colors of the Gabrielle Maxi, we asked people like, "Send us what colors you like." So
Yeah.
yeah, it's nice to know because yeah, I'm choosing things that I like, but at the end of the day, I want the customer,
Has
this
to
is
sell
more.
too. It's still a business at the end of the day.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I like that they feel like they're involved,
Yeah.
because they are.
Right. No, that I think that's an important piece of that not a lot of brands take into consideration. I think
Mhm.
even designers, it's like it's easy to get caught up in what you think is cute or what you think will work. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, you are a business selling to consumers. And so you want to make sure that you're giving the consumer what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah, and all my favorites always end up being the best sellers, so I'm like, "Okay, so that's
You're on to
good."
something.
I'm on. Yeah.
And so as you reflect back on this last year,
Mhm.
and actually 2 years of since starting to
Mhm.
build this brand, what has been some of your biggest challenges? Like the things that you're like, oh, okay, I hope I can get over this hump, or like this is a really hard moment as a business owner right now.
Yeah, there's been a lot. There's been a lot. I think a big thing because I'm self-funded is funding.
Mm-hmm.
And so starting off, I was like, okay, I have this money saved up. And just not really realizing how expensive it is. And to
Yeah.
keep up with a clothing line is so expensive. So, figuring that out, and then production issues, figuring those out. We recently just we're finishing up production for the new dress here in
Mm-hmm.
LA, and figuring that out was a huge challenge that we were not expecting. And
Yeah.
so we started that in November, and it was just like thing after thing with the pattern, because we had to bring the pattern back over, and
Yeah.
then they had a different software, and it was just,
Okay.
it was like every single thing after thing after thing, and like we're like, we're never doing this again. No, but I would like to continue to do some production here. My
Yeah.
goal, I think, will to be to kind of mix it, have like a few things here in small batches, and then a few things, it's still a smaller batch overseas, but it's a lot less that we can do over here.
Right. Yeah, there's I think positives and negatives to both, and I think it's good to kind of also, like you said, share it. Like you don't always want everything in one place because you never know
Hmm.
what'll happen. I know even when I was at 11, again in the midst of COVID, it was we had stuff here we were doing, and then we had some stuff overseas. But there was a point where it's like, okay, China shut down right now. So like now we
Yeah.
have to focus on the production over here. And then we shut down and it's like, okay, China's back open. So it was kind of good that we were able to go between both because at different points we were shut down at different times.
Hmm. Yeah, and then, once your stuff is on a boat coming over,
Mm-hmm.
it's totally out of your
Out of your
control.
hands.
I
Right.
remember just thinking like my whole collection is just on a boat
Right.
right now, on its way here. And
Right.
then it can get stopped at the dock
Mm-hmm.
and at the port, and then it can be delayed.
In
I
customs or yeah.
At one point they were on strike at the port, I
Mm-hmm.
remember, and then yeah, so there's a lot of that, and then sometimes something arrives early,
Right.
but yeah, I think in the beginning it was a lot of production.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the biggest challenges of getting through the Chinese New Year and the production and all of
Yeah.
that. And now it's kind of just continuing of like figuring out how to really grow the business and scale
Right.
the business, and then
Mhm.
also being a solo founder
Right.
with a small team. And so right now I would really love to have a bigger team,
Mhm.
because it's just so much work to do on your own. And I
Yeah.
have to remind myself at times like I'm doing the job of
Right.
many people. And so yeah, hopefully in the next year we'll have a bigger team.
Yeah. Great. I
That will
love
be
that.
helpful.
I love
Yeah.
that. And how have you kind of mentioned the funding piece, and I feel like that is always, I know what stops a lot of designers or, wannabe founders. It kind of stops them in their tracks. Like, okay, I don't know
Hmm.
how I can fund this. Do you have any tips or thoughts around kind of how to approach that piece of it?
So I recently just started getting into, actually Taylor
Mhm.
um has helped me a lot in that way of applying for grants.
Mhm.
There's a lot of money out there, and I didn't start that until recently, but there's a lot of money, especially for women owned businesses,
Right.
black women owned businesses, black
Yeah.
businesses. So now I'm trying to take advantage of some of that.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I think of really like planning everything out and having everything written out of like what everything is going to cost you.
Yeah.
And I still work full time.
Okay.
I still have my other like three careers that I
Right.
do. I still am a hairstylist.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been a hairstylist for 16 years. So
Right.
I do hair on the weekends.
Yes.
I model, I do influencing, and so I still have multiple streams of income that I'm able to still put money in when needed.
Right.
But it's hard. It's hard in the beginning, because you need a big chunk of money to
Yeah,
start.
to start, right.
Um,
Before you ever see anything come back in. It's like
yeah.
you're pushing it out, but you're like, wait, when will I get anything to come back in?
Yes. So
Yeah.
I think really planning it out, and it's okay to start smaller.
Yeah.
But just knowing exactly what your costs are and going into it, there were a lot of things that we just didn't know ahead of time. We didn't, because until you actually have that sample, you don't know what it's going to cost you. So you have to
Right.
you have to go through one process just to even figure out all your costs.
Right. No, for sure.
So I remember there was a point where I didn't even know what each dress was going to break down and cost me in the end until I got that first they have to sample it and do the pattern and everything
Right.
just to figure it out. So
Right.
to even get to that process is kind of pricey because you have to pay for your patterns. You have to pay for your first samples. If you're doing it here fabric,
Right.
which we started off, but we were able to just do one color for each kind of fabric. But yeah, so there's a lot of upfront costs that go into it, and then starting the business
Right.
and all of that.
Right. You have a website and all of that stuff that comes into for your overhead.
Yeah. So I think if I could go back, I would have taken advantage of the funding earlier.
Okay.
And then once you start getting your sales, Shopify has money that they'll lend you. They have a capital program based off of your sales. And then once you have a higher number of sales, there's other resources that you can find that will based off of your sales, where there's like a low interest, but they have a connection to your Shopify, and they'll lend you money for production and things like that if you've hit a certain number. But you first have to get to those numbers.
I know. That's a good tip and a good point, because I've also seen other grant programs, that they do want to see some proof that you can sell your product.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And some of them are high, like, because I've been really researching. Some of them, they want to see that you've already made 6 figures in that year before they're going to give you anything. So yeah, then that's unrealistic if you don't have much money to start with.
Right. And then over the last couple of years, what has been the biggest win for you? Like the moment you were like, oh, I'm so proud of myself. Like, I'm so proud.
Looking back, so in the moment, like, I didn't realize this, but now looking back, like just on launch day, the amount of people that we had. And then now looking back at the first year, when you see how many people were on your website, that's just like so crazy to see. And then the articles, Forbes was a huge one. I literally sat here crying when I saw Forbes.
I love it.
It was like, oh my God. Because that was so unexpected. Who What Wear was a huge one, Teen Vogue, just like seeing all the articles. And now we're in store at one store here at the Plus Bus, and then now we're going to be in stores in Nashville. So that's like another exciting thing to know, that people can go shop in store somewhere.
IRL, exactly.
IRL.
No, that's a great, those are some really big wins. And I think especially for it launching a year ago, I mean, to already have that traction and that those eyes on you is really such a big win. And I'm so excited and happy for you. For what you've built. It's not, and I've talked to many business owners. I've been on the brand side working for a company, haven't gone into it for myself, but I've talked to a lot of people and they all say the same thing. It's not an easy industry to get into. There's a lot of upfront costs, like you said, a lot of headaches, I always say that designing, as a designer, I feel like I'm a problem solver 90% of the time. It's like, this pattern's off. Okay, let's fix this. This fabric's not working. Okay, let's fix it. Okay, this didn't construct correctly. Okay, it's like always like trying to problem solve and fix throughout the process to get to eventually what it is that you want at the end.
Well, thank you.
Of course. And so as you think about the future, the next maybe 2 to 3 years, how do you see your brand Gia IRL growing? Like, what are your hopes for yourself and for the brand?
I would love to be in some big retail stores, Nordstrom. I have a bridal collection that I've worked on. I'd love to do like a Anthropologie or David's Bridal. I'd really love to see that bridal collection come to life. So yeah, my next big goal is to get into some big retailers.
Awesome. So that more people can experience Gia IRL.
Yes, more
Yeah.
brand awareness. When I first started, I wanted to just be only direct to consumer.
Uh-huh.
And I laugh because I'm like laughing at past Gia. But yeah, I mean, it's a great idea to be
Hmm.
just direct to consumer. But I would love, yeah, I would love to be in store. I think that would be amazing. More brand awareness and just, yeah, more plus size women that can try on my pieces
Hmm.
and feel amazing in them.
Awesome. Well, my ultimate goal here is to, again, shine a light on people I've met within the industry who have some really amazing things going on. So, if you could, as we close, just let our listeners know how they can support you, where they can find your clothes, your Instagram, all of that good stuff.
So my personal Instagram and TikTok is Gia Sinatra. And then you can find the brand at giairl.com, or we are on Instagram and TikTok at Gia_IRL.
Perfection. Well, thank you again, Gia, for joining me on the Xtnded Convos podcast. It's been really great learning more about you, about your brand, and how you've navigated the past year or two in building it. And I think it'll help a lot of women, a lot of brand owners, or even established brands that want to expand into extended size ranges. Really navigate that journey for themselves. So I am personally wishing you the best of luck as you continue to grow. I know I can see that there's going to be amazing things on the horizon, and I can't wait to see it, to be front row to see how it grows.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all your support.
Of course. And so with that, we will say goodbye to Gia. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.